The Green River case is the most unusual case, I think, in the history of this country.
Explorer scouts have found the remains of another human body buried on a wooded hillside near Seattle.
You're talking about 60, 70, possibly 80 victims. There were 2 victims that contained bodily fluids left behind by someone who had a sexual encounter with them. Those samples today would be immediately tested for DNA, but back in 1982, DNA was an unknown technology. With the investigation not making any progress, there was a decision finally made in the late 80s to begin to downsize the task force. You had victims' families who were angry. They were disappointed in us. They were critical of us. They felt that we didn't care.
Advances in technology helped solve this case, no doubt about it.
In 2001, the Washington State Patrol Crime Lab came on board with the STR-PCR technologies that can analyze really minimal samples. It was really a breakthrough in forensic DNA analysis.
Before we started using PCR, we had to have a stain that was relatively large. PCR allows us to take small amounts of DNA and copy regions of it over and over and over again until we have more copies of that particular area of the DNA that we're interested in.
In early 2001, I sent the samples to the lab and asked them to analyze the material. We felt this could be the last chance we got with this evidence.
We started with the girls found in the Green River. On some of the autopsy evidence, the swabs, they were completely taken off of the sticks and used in past technologies. We had limited sperm come off those sticks, but enough to generate a male profile from 2 of the victims. We had the same male profile from another victim in a separate crime scene, but we didn't know who it was. We had reference samples collected from potential suspects in the past. Those reference samples were run. One of them matched that of the evidence from the Green River victims.
52-year-old Gary Ridgway. This seemingly average man is one of the most prolific serial killers America has ever seen.
FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole is using a carefully devised psychological strategy in her interrogation of the Green River killer, Gary Ridgway. Her goal is to get him to confess to 44 unsolved homicides where no physical evidence exists that could link him to the crimes. O'Toole is recognized as the FBI's leading expert in the area of psychopathy.
Many of these men kill women. They may maim them and sexually assault them, but they love talking to women. They love talking to people that are good interviewers and that will listen. My strategy was to get him talking and to have him do most of the talking. How are you this morning?
Pretty good. Slept real good. A little toss and turning, but pretty good.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that. I would also sit very close to him so that I could maybe touch his elbow and say, Gary, tell me what it feels like.
The questioning goes on for weeks. Some sessions last for hours.
Turn him off and he will not talk. And your goal is to keep him talking.
And finally, something within Gary Ridgway cracks. Bit by bit, he starts talking.
I don't know if it started at an early age, but sex and hurting the woman.
And he loved being able to talk finally after all these years. And in doing so, he kind of walked us down the path of all of his murders. At one point, Gary referred to himself as something like the lean, mean killing machine, and he was very efficient, like a machine.
Explain that process to me.
Let's say she's always in the car, driving down the road, so I whipped out my ID, and with my ID would be I'd put my finger over my driver's license to hide my name. But on the opposite side was pictures. And a picture of my son. They would know I was a probably normal person.
But you were really using your son as part of your ruse.
The girls would think Ridgway was a kind family man. They had no idea they were setting off with a serial killer.
And he would drive up to them, and sometimes he'd even have his son's toys in the front seat, and that would be a very effective ruse to convince these women that, hey, I can't be that serial killer. I've got my little boy's toys in the car. He was a very normal, kind of vanilla type looking person, and there was nothing that stood out about him. Not dangerous. He could have been anybody living next door. He was anybody living next door.